vInspired, please give a massive welcome to Brooke Kinsella.
Everybody. I need to start by saying it is amazing to see so many of you here today to support such an important event when the sun is shining out there today. So well done, every single person who's in this room. For me personally, it's an absolute honour to be here speaking to you at an event that is all about young people taking positive action for change. Now, I imagine that many of you here have ideas or dreams or reasons to want to change the world, but you might think at times that it's quite simply impossible, right? There's been many times over the past few years where I've thought that change isn't possible and that I wasn't getting anywhere. And it's only when I'm asked to speak to other people about what I've achieved that I'm able to look back and see that even the smallest steps and the tiniest changes can make a world of difference, not just to your life, but to many others out there. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the journey I've been on for the past 5 years, in the hope that it will show you that one person can make such a difference. And when I'm talking about that one person, I'm not actually talking about myself, but my beautiful brother, Ben. So for anybody who doesn't know Ben's story, Ben was 16 years old when he was stabbed to death 11 times in 2008. He had just finished his GCSEs, he was predicted A-star grades, and he was looking forward to a summer of freedom before going off to college, and he wanted to study to be a graphic designer or David Beckham's tattoo artist. For no rhyme or reason, he was snatched away. He literally went out one night, and he never came home again. And if I was allowed to, I would talk forever about my brother, but all I really want to say is that he was a normal, annoying 16-year-old boy with a heart of gold and his whole life ahead of him. And the decision that those men that killed him made that night had such an effect, not only on my family, but a massive ripple effect on so many others. And it's hard to put into words what a tragedy like this does to your family. If you've ever lost anybody out there, you know what it feels like, you know the pain that it causes. But when it's in such a violent and unnatural way, it can be quite impossible to comprehend. And I've worked with so many families who've lost people to knife crime, and everybody deals with it in their own way. And so when it happened to my family, there were two obvious paths we could take. We could lie down, give up, or we could start fighting to make it though that Ben's life and death wasn't in vain. And I can honestly tell you now that when Ben died, I had no intention of fighting. I didn't want to fight, I didn't want to make any changes because what was the point? It's not going to bring him back. But the nation and the good people out there, they took Ben to their hearts and they demanded to know why it had happened, how it had been allowed to happen. And it made me realize that if strangers were willing to stand up for my brother and everybody else that we've lost to knife crime, then I've got to do something too, right? But first of all, I had to figure out what I actually wanted to do. What changes did I want to make? And for a start, I needed to make those in power realize that knife crime was becoming a real problem to our society. I needed to make the government, schools, parents all come together and realize that we need to make our streets safer. But how is somebody like me, 5 foot 1.5 inches, going to be able to reach out to those people in authority? And even if I did reach out to them, why would anything I say make a difference? Because thousands of people before me have tried for so long to get people to understand what a problem this was and to try and instigate change. So what approach could I take that was different? Now, I know that I am really lucky to have had the voice that I've had and the opportunities I've been given the past few years. Obviously, being that girl from EastEnders helped massively when I started my campaign, but there's been many campaigns that celebrities have fronted, and yes, they're very high profile, but they're gone in a day. And almost 5 years later, I am now known as Ben's sister or government advisor or even expert sometimes. And I'm very proud of that, but it does make me laugh because I don't class myself as an expert at all. But over the past few years, amongst many other things, despite knowing absolutely nothing about law, politics, business, funding, never did agree in any of those things, I've managed to help change the law around sentencing for knife crime. I got an MBE from Prince Charles for services to knife crime. I travelled the country and wrote a report for the Home Office and was given £18 million worth of funding to tackle knife crime. So when I say these things out loud and I list them in black and white, I start to feel really proud because I realise that in taking something really heartbreaking for me and trying to turn it into a positive thing for other people, I've actually come quite a long way in 5 years. Thank you. Thank you. Right, so how did I do this? I get so many emails asking me, how did you start your campaign? How did you get so much support? And my biggest advice to you, my two biggest tools have always been the media, social networks. Two biggest tips I can give you. A few days after Ben died, a group of his friends decided that they wanted to organise a simple march in his name to say no to knives. And through the power of social networking, 500 people in a matter of hours gathered and they marched through the streets of Islington for Ben. And this caught the attention of the media, and that night it was played on every news channel, and just like that, we had the authorities listening. So a group of young people had used their voice and the things that they know most about, Twitter, Facebook, to create something so wonderful, so powerful, that it opened the door for me to go in and speak to the people that we needed to talk to make those changes. So what you're doing today, picking up your phone, tweeting, Facebooking, I promise you it does work. The power of a tweet is amazing. So after that march, I was granted a meeting with the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, and he wanted me to tell him what I thought needed to be done, which was scary enough in itself. And so to this meeting, I took a letter that I found in Ben's coursework book when I was being a really bad big sister and going through his room, raiding like everything to kind of learn some new stuff about him. And I found this letter, and to sum up the letter, Ben was asked to write to the Prime Minister expressing concerns about something he was passionate about. He wasn't given any guidance on this issue, but at the age of 16, he chose to write how worried he was about youth violence. He was worried that a small amount of young people were laughing at the powerless police. He'd just read a story where 2 people were beaten to death because they dressed in Gothic clothing, and it upset him so much. He was worried that when we hosted the Olympics in a few years, that people would come over and not feel safe or welcome in our country. He wanted tougher sentencing for those that were committing these violent crimes, but most of all, he wanted people to come together to create change. And so for me, it was now very clear what direction I had to take, because if a 16-year-old boy was this concerned about our society and the actions of his peers, when really he should have been feeling safe and looked after by the grown-ups, then I had to make those changes that he wanted. So after the trial in which the 3 men who killed Ben were sentenced to 19 years each, my family and I worked really hard for a year to try and change the law around knife crime. If you didn't know, previously the starting tariff was 15 years for murder with a knife, but with a gun it was 30. So we didn't understand the difference between these 2 weapons because they cause equal damage. So we set about trying to make the sentencing longer. And after many letters to the Justice Secretary in the Home Office, many media interviews, and I've got to pause to say here, the media, as I said before, are one of your biggest tools. I'm really lucky because they've been a big supporter of my cause. But if you want to get your message out there, even getting your local press to help you, it will work. They are a brilliant tool to get your message out there, I promise you. So finally, on the 10th of November 2009, the law was officially changed and the minimum tariff for murder was raised to 25 years. And this law was dubbed unofficially Ben's Law, and it is one of the proudest achievements that I have in memory of my brother. So, obviously it was too late to raise the sentencing of those that killed Ben, but hopefully that change will help other families who sadly might have to go through this and act as a deterrent for those who are thinking about doing it. So, when I started my campaign, I didn't even pretend to know what I was doing. The only experience I had was the personal effect that this had had on me, and I wanted to find out answers. The biggest question everybody had, obviously, and still has to this day, is why is this happening? Ben was the 17th teenager stabbed to death just in London the year he died, so nobody could tell me that this wasn't a problem. But for the solution, I had to go out and talk to the people who knew about it, who were actually doing it or knew all about it. So there's a famous saying, fight fire with fire, right? I am more of a fight fire with water kind of girl, because it just makes more sense. And so I have found that communicating calmly and sensibly and peacefully will bring about much more better rewards, much more changes than going in all guns blazing and demanding answers and retribution. So whether I'm talking to a gang of boys in Liverpool or to a 12-year-old girl who hides razor blades in her hair, I have met that girl, or to a mum who's lost her son herself, I don't allow myself to get angry or upset or to judge. I think the second you get arrogant enough to believe that you know what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes, you've lost them. Even when I'm faced with people that have done the same thing to someone else's brother that's happened to mine, I try really hard not to judge. It's very hard, don't get me wrong. I've just simply found that listening and trying to understand another person's point of view goes a very long way. And listening to me is a key word, because many people think that the young people of today are all the same. They're all lazy, or they're binge drinkers, or they're hooligans, and you lot are responsible for all of society's problems. And I think we all know in this room that that's not true at all, is it? There are thousands and thousands of young people that I have met who are desperate to help, and they are in a key position to help. They are the best people to help because they know what's going on out there, and they just want to be given a voice. So a couple of years ago, a few of our families, we got together, including mine. We'd all lost somebody to knife crime, and we founded a charity called Families United. And we wanted to set up a support network across the country that families could come to for help and advice if they needed it. So we launched our charity by visiting 10 secondary schools in 1 week across the country. And we gave an assembly talking about our loved ones and saying how much we missed them. And we asked all the kids that we spoke to sign a pledge called Count Me In. So we asked them to never carry a knife, to never be bullied into doing anything they didn't want to do, to stand up and be counted as somebody against knife crime. And then we asked them, right, go out, find one friend, tell them about what you've learned, how you feel, and get them to sign the pledge as well. And at the end of the week, 5 days, Monday till Friday, we had nearly 40,000 kids sign that pledge. That was from 10 schools. So again, the power of social networking helped massively. But for me, the key thing was giving the message to the right people, the young people, and asking them to deliver it in the right way. And I have visited hundreds of knife crime projects across the country, researching and doing a report for the Home Office on what seems to be working and what didn't. And every successful project I saw out there had one key thing, and that was somebody delivering it who had been through it themselves. Young people are much more likely to listen to someone of their age or to an ex-offender or to a parent who's lost a child than they ever are to a teacher or a policeman that's going to preach to them. So one of the key recommendations in my report was that we give young people a chance to show us what they can do instead of blaming them for all the wrong that is happening out there. I am a big champion of young people, and so today I make a call to those in authority, to the media, to businesses, entrepreneurs, to realise the potential and ability of our young people and use them to make the changes that are needed. But I also make a call to you. Please, please don't underestimate what you can do or let anybody tell you that you can't do it. And if you're inspired by anything that you hear today and you think, right, yeah, I want to take a step, I want to make a difference, one word, volunteering. If you've got a spare hour or two, pick a charity that you're passionate about, go out and help them. As somebody who runs a charity myself, I can't tell you the impact that our volunteers have. They are literally changing and possibly saving lives. So it might be a small thing to you, 1 or 2 hours out of your week, but you can have the most incredible effect. If you'd have told me years ago that I would be speaking at an event like this, because believe it or not, I'm ridiculously scared up here, or that I would one day have meetings with Gordon Brown and David Cameron and tell them how to do their job, or that I would have an MBE locked away in a cabinet. I've never been able to touch it because my dad says, oh, you'll only break it or you lose it. I would have said, you're crazy. But this was never supposed to be my life. And there are days I don't want this to be my life. You know, I don't want to be figuring out how you reach out to damaged people or fight in a battle that sometimes think, well, you're just never going to win this. You know, I don't want to be an expert on things that a normal 29-year-old girl shouldn't really have to know about. I just want to be a big sister to a brother that drives me crazy, to be honest with you. But this is life, and at the risk of sounding like a big old cliche, life is full of surprises, we know that. And maybe it takes being thrown in at the deep end and having something worth fighting for to realise that you're actually really rather good at it. Thank you very much.